Hey, this is George with the New Hunter's Guide, the YouTube channel and podcast, helping new hunters get started and helping active hunters learn new things. Today we've got cold and snow and blizzard, and it is a great time to talk about synthetic insulation. Specifically, what is best? Primaloft, Thinsulate, Thermalite versus down. Now, to talk about this conversation specifically, we got to look at a little bit of history for context. So what is down? Well, down is insulation that is under the feathers of ducks and geese and other waterfowl. It's what keeps them warm on 0-degree days when they're flying thousands of feet in the air over the course of hundreds of miles before touching down in water. It is some of the most amazing insulation on planet Earth. Now, down in and of itself is maybe still the best thing that you could get for insulating just about anything. It is unbelievably warm for its weight and volume. It packs down well. You can squish it and compress it, and then it poofs back up just like it does on a duck's belly. And it works really well for just about anything. So why then would someone try to make something synthetic when down works so well? Well, down has downsides. Specifically, when it gets wet, its ability to insulate decreases drastically. It loses something like 80 or more % of its insulative properties when wet, maybe even more than that. So the search for a down alternative was first commissioned by the military in order to find something for soldiers in extreme weather climates that would keep them warm even when wet. And this is where Primaloft came in. Primaloft insulation was the answer to that challenge. It was developed as a synthetic Goose Down to replace Goose Down and pretty much anywhere where you could use it, and it retains the majority of its insulative capabilities even if it gets wet. So Primaloft is pretty amazing, outstanding stuff. Then enter Thinsulate, designed by 3M. It is also a down alternative, and it is built a little bit different than Primaloft. Primaloft is more about mimicking down and the loft and the poofiness and compressing that in order to trap air. Thinsulate comes along with a little bit different approach, same general idea, but they use thinner fibers and pack a higher density of thin fibers, which creates a different type of insulative property. Thinsulate, as the name would lead you to believe, works better when it's thin versus a Primaloft might. And that is going to work good for things that have very small or fine articulative movements like gloves. Thinsulate works really well in gloves because it can be very effective when thin, very dense. You need small layers of it, and it can do an outstanding job. Now, it also works really well in bigger things like this parka that I'm wearing right here is filled through and through. The arms, the chest, the back, even the hood have 200 grams or so of Thinsulate in them, and it works really well for keeping you warm. Now, would this same garment be warmer if it was Primaloft? Hard to say. Primaloft doesn't work as well for articulated movement, say in elbows and things like that, but it would potentially be warmer than Thinsulate. But more about that in a moment. Next, we have Thermalite insulation. Now, Thermalite is another synthetic down alternative. It came a little later to the party, and its big marketing pitch is that it is light. And it does very similar to what Primaloft and Thinsulate do, slightly different properties, sometimes made from recycled materials, different marketing and so on. Not that that makes it any warmer, but it is another alternative, and there are dozens more, guys, probably more than that, and they all have their own unique brands and marketing. All right, so the question is, how do they compare against each other, and how do they compare against other materials? But first, a word from our sponsor. Oh, that's me. I'm the sponsor. I'm the one that does the research. I buy and test the gear, and everything about this comes out of my time and my money. But you guys could support me by hitting that thumbs up button. It really helps the video reach more people, as well as other videos on the channel. So how do they compare? Well, Everyone's marketing would love to lead you to believe that their product is the best. And I have done copious research on this subject. Hours of research, looking through almost everything that is written on the web, specifically comparing Primaloft to Thinsulate. Those two in particular. Which one's better? How do they compare? How do they rate? Is 200 grams of Primaloft warmer than 200 grams of Thinsulate? And what I have learned and discovered after literally reading everything I could find, using the quotes and searches on Google, and then every single result that comes back, is there's really no objective measurement to be able to tell which one is better. They would say Primaloft is loftier, it has more poof, and it holds more air. Thinsulate would say that it's thinner and that it was able to do the job with smaller layers. And Thermalite would just say it does a great job, and no one really tries to compare it against the others. So what I've come away with in this search is that it really depends on the garment and how the garment is made. You know, is 200 grams of one better than 200 grams of another? And if you don't know what that means, when I say 200 grams, that is 200 grams per square meter. I did a video on that subject explaining how that's measured, what it means, what to look for, what to know. I'll link to that in the description. But in this conversation, which one's better? It's going to depend more on how the garment's made. What else is in it? This coat has a windproof, waterproof membrane on the outside that keeps this frigid, blistery, snowy wind from cutting through. And then the insulation on the inside is able to retain my body heat and keep me warm. But maybe you've got a nice fleecy interior. Maybe you've got any other number of materials that are built in. Maybe you've got a merino wool lining on the inside of a super heavy duty piece. What works better is going to depend more on the construction and quality of the garment than comparing one insulation to another. Usually for gloves, you see more Thinsulate than anything else due to its unique properties, but for just about anything else, the quality of the piece is going to matter more. So if you think, well, this has 200 grams of Thinsulate and this one has 200 grams of Primaloft, which one should I buy? That should not be the defining factor. If those things are equal, what should make the difference is how is it made? What are the other properties and materials that are involved? And then where does Thermalite fit in? How does that measure up? Well, as best as I can tell, it's in the same ballpark as the other two. If you have 200 grams of Thermalite and you've got a garment that's made well and you like the rest of the materials, I wouldn't say that's in any way inferior to 200 grams of Primaloft. Now, of course, each of these companies, they have different grades. There's different, you've got platinum, and you've got titanium, and you've got gold level, and all these different things, silver level this. Every brand has their own, precious metals and colors that they use to describe their different degrees and variations of insulation. But the bottom line is they all compare relatively even if equal amounts are used in the ideal situation. The garment itself is what makes the difference. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. Hit that thumbs up button if you've enjoyed this video. Really appreciate you for watching. Check out the website, newhuntersguide.com, for 180 some episodes of the podcast. Anything that you can imagine on how to learn how to hunt and information to help get other people started in the sport as well. Till next time, God bless you and go get them in the woods.